Welcome to the good ride. This is the Nidecker Megalight. I rode this with Union Atlas, Nidecker K-On X, Nidecker Rift Lace Ride Fused Ride Torrent boots, and then Footprint King Foam Orthotic Elite insoles. I got this at the end of the season, so I didn't have a lot of time. The season before, I put the Nidecker Ultralight through its paces in every kind of condition. This has the same shape, the same camber profile, same everything except for different construction. So I really didn't need to test this extensively like I did the Ultralight. Let's talk sizing. This 161 is the size I would want to buy if I were to buy this. It worked really well with my size 9 boots. It could definitely handle a bigger boot, but I had no problem controlling this board, and it worked very well for my weight. When it comes to shape, you have a very tapered directional ride, but it doesn't feel that tapered. It doesn't feel that directional, especially when you're set up on reference stance. I wouldn't have guessed it had 18 mil of taper. I would have said it felt more like 8 to 10 mil of taper by the way the tail didn't wash out on a turn. When it comes to this camber profile, it's a mellow camber between the feet with a long flat transition into some early rise. It tracks really well. It's pretty forgiving. Sometimes it felt a little catchy and like it didn't want to complete the turning radius like I'd like it to. One footing off a chair, flat basing, it's pretty easy to skid a turn. I wish it had a little more camber from the tail all the way past the front foot. I think that would really bring this board alive. This has such a dynamic poppy flex. It's a very slick ride right here. Oh, it's got a medium stiff flex. It's not that soft in the nose and not that soft in the tail, a little stiffer between the feet. And you have this coring here that allows you a little easier twist in the middle. But overall, I was surprised at how easy this flexed on snow, buttering off the tail, buttering on the nose, and that little twist between the feet gives you some torsional turning magic that I think a lot of people will appreciate. When it comes to popping on an ollie, well, I didn't really like that long flat transition into early rise out of a turn. This really is dynamic, poppy, and springy on an ollie. You get so much more pop than you would think for this kind of camber profile. It's easier to access this pop than the Ultralight. And when you take this dynamic poppy ride and you put it out in uneven terrain like hard micro bumpy snow or wet messy uneven snow at the end of the day or tracked up powder day, yeah, it's a little bucky and bouncy, but it's not bad for this kind of flex personality. This has an exceptional base. Nidecker just does cool stuff with their high-end boards. This doesn't have as much structure as some of their bases do, but man, midwinter, this is just hard to beat. When it comes to pointing it, this board definitely has some of that pointy capability, the straight line capability. It might not be the most damp board in terms of absorbing chatter. The nose and tail, especially the nose, might clown shoe a little bit, and the construction of this board doesn't absorb vibrations as well as some boards out there. But let me tell you, you can point it with this. This is a very fun big mountain board. There's very good edge hold here, does not grab at all in softer snow, but it grips pretty well in hard snow. It's not an ice specialist, but it'll definitely handle you if you get some surprise here and there. When it comes to turn initiation, I felt this was very quick edge to edge. When I got it on edge, it's very balanced. Good for across the groomer turns, good for down the line, longer drawn out S turns, not the best circle carver and not the hardest carver. And that's primarily because there isn't all this camber there. I think if they just gave a little more camber towards the tail, it would light this board up and it would be amazing as a carver. But as it stands now, it's pretty good. You can front foot weight a turn pretty well, but I think it likes center to back foot weighted turns a little bit better. This is a very good board for powder, especially because they added these setback inserts. And using these setback inserts at a 22.75 inch stance width, you can get 5.125 inches back from center of board. That is a lot compared to most freeride boards in this peer group. It really has a good setback on board. My only complaint is that the setback inserts that they put in here for powder days don't match the stance width of the reference stance at 22 inches. Going to 22.75 is a little wide for most riders who are going to be on this board. Then you factor in all that taper, 18 mil of taper, which is a lot of early rise before that big floaty nose and that small tail. You really have a board that transforms into almost a powder board. Definitely not a full-on dedicated easy floating powder board, but this can handle deeper days better than most traditional freeride boards. As far as switch riding goes, you can ride switch pretty well on this, especially when you're on reference. It's a lot better than you would think for being such a tapered directional ride. It has a lot of tail for going big on natural features around the mountain to land on. Even when you're on the setback inserts, I think it'll be good enough for most. Overall, the Nidecker Megalight is a board I've owned in the past. I've been riding this since the early O's, and it's one of those boards that I've had a special connection with, especially those old ones. It's such a special balance between being kind of tapered and surfy and directional while still being big mountain. And it's still doing that today. I think it could work with a wide variety of riders, especially people who don't want something as technical as a lot of freeride boards like this can be. I thought I would like the damper, more stiff ultralight than the Megalight, but it's the other way around. Who knew?